actually one of the first ones I've been able to kind of take part and observe. So
oh, good.
I'm eager.
See that, Meg? You have nothing to worry about. This is Brandon's first Google Hangout demonstration here, so he's got nothing to compare you to.
All right.
So you can use us, Brandon. The way this works is Meg's just going to act like she's at a workshop. I would love you, Meg, to do just a quick introduction of yourself, even though you're jumping into this principle number 2. It would just be great for Brandon to get an idea of a little bit of your background.
Does that count as part of my time?
No, because this would be done at the beginning of the workshop. It wouldn't be done when you hit principle 2. So.
Okay.
And what I do for the final one is I don't set a stopwatch. I mean, I don't set a timer. I just set a stopwatch. So finish the principle and I'll let you know how much time that you took. Because when you do a regular workshop, you're going to have the full time. So you might spend, 15 minutes on one principle and 25 on another principle. That's just your preference.
Okay.
So I'm not going to stop you at 20 minutes and say stop, but I do keep time so that we know how much time you took.
Got it.
Use Brandon and I will be your coaches. We can answer multiple questions for you. We can talk, we can share, we can stand on our heads, whatever you want us to do. Brandon's probably standing on his head right now. You just can't see me.
Exactly. You just can't see me.
So whenever you're ready, Meg, it's all you.
All right. So my name is Meg Waldron. I have a master's in sports psychology, and I've coached athletes for over 20 years. And in the most recent era of that, it's been youth runners and middle school runners. And that's who we're really trying to help get in those upstream preventions of issues that might come up for them later on in their sports career. So how many people out there consider themselves competitive?
I do.
Yeah.
And how many people out there consider themselves like physical learners, people who learn by doing?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely, yeah.
I think that's why all of you, as well as me, I can speak the same for that, have really been drawn to sports, not only as something that we do, but as something that we teach. The downside of being an adult now is we didn't grow up with all the careful, supportive language that is available today for raising young people. So I don't know about you, but did anybody grow up in an environment either through parents or youth coaches where it was like the end game, that it was all about the end game, it was all about winning, it was all about results? Anybody out there have that experience?
Both of my parents were teachers, so I kind of had a different experience where they were trained in working with kids.
All right, so we have a little bit of a balance in the room. Thanks, Brandon. You might be the only one, but you'll be the voice of balance for us. Yeah, I remember in high school saying to my coach, hey, all my friends have after-school jobs and they're making money. And my coach saying to me, this is your after-school job, running. This is going to be your ticket to a college scholarship. That's what we're training for. And the downside is that along the way, I wasn't learning any other marketable or life skills for when that ride was over. So when college was over, I was like, okay, now what do I do with my life? And the big focus was around winning. And, a lot of adults, a lot of were, I never had a female coach. All my coaches were male. Has anybody ever out there had a female coach or are a female coach? All right, good. So, in that respect too, there was, a lot of men out there really pushing this kind of win at all cost attitude. And if something went wrong, there was like, they would get angry, there was like, they would be embarrassed, they would get angry and they'd want to punish us. And so we're going to shift that culture because kids don't deserve it. And you don't have to be that person. So one of the most challenging things about this work is the work that we do for ourselves to sort of retrain our brains to make us better people for the children that we're helping. And what I really like about the Elm Tree of Mastery is for us more visual, physical learners, it's a really great way to remember this the tools you can use to work with the kids in the way that helps them develop life skills. So not to say that we're not focusing at all on, we still want to build competition, we still want winning teams, but this really gives you a great way to remember how to do that. You're not going to be looking at a clipboard or a book when you're out there on the field. So we call this the Elm Tree of Mastery because the focus is on 3 things. The E is for effort. So we talked before about praise and specific praise. We're going to delve into that even more here. Praising effort. Where the L is for learning, working with kids in a teachable moment. And we've talked about a little bit that before. And then the M is for mistakes, that mistakes are okay. So it's not something we punish. We can make corrections. We can give healthy critiques, positive critiques, but we're not going to be punishing kids out there. Okay, does anybody have any questions so far on the Elm Tree of Mastery? Okay, so one of the things I like about the word mastery is it kind of makes me think of like being in the zone. When you're really mastered something, you're in the zone. Are people familiar with that, like being in the zone, playing in the sweet spot, being in a flow state? Does anybody have any other suggestions about what that, have they heard different ways of talking about that feeling of being really in the zone, in a state of mastery?
No.
Did I nail the mark?
Describe it.
So with this second principle, the Elm Tree of Mastery, it's really about teaching the athletes to believe that they can improve. And athletes who have that mindset perform better. So we're going to look at this next video to show the research that backs this. This is Carol Dweck. She's out of Stanford. She's done a lot of research with kids and learning, and this is what she's found.
Want me to play it so you can hear it?
Sure.
Okay.
We did a study of college athletes looking at whether they believed their coaches valued effort and practice or natural talent and outcomes. The more they believed their coaches valued effort and practice, the better they did that year and the more they improved. It is crucial for coaches to send that message. I value practice, I value effort, I value setting your goals in terms of practice and effort. Many coaches may think it's obvious. Effort and practice lead to greater skills and a winning record. But if they don't communicate that value to players, those players may be working in a completely different framework.
So what I'd like you to do is think about, for you, what do you think is the most important thing for you? What resonated for you in that video?
I know that when I saw it, the first thing that resonated with me is when she said most coaches think it's obvious. And I realized that's probably me, because I think obviously my players know that I value effort and practice over, talent, but I don't know that I make it intentional in telling them that.
Good, Kelly. Yeah. I mean, we think they're getting it and we think we don't have to teach it. But what we don't realize is we're in a tug of war with the rest of the messages these kids are getting from the world around them. Video games, television, social media, parents, friends, peer conflicts. The message is about dominate and control, and not necessarily about growing, learning, developing, supporting, collaborating. Anybody else?
I think I echo what Kelly said, that the most kind of poignant thing to me was that the coach can have a different perspective of what they're thinking, what the player is actually getting out of the situation, that there's two different perspectives in there. And that if we're not thinking about it from what the parents or what the players are how they're experiencing it, then we can have all the best plans in the world and they still don't work.
Exactly. Thanks, Brandon. That's great. Like, the kids playing have so much great information to give us. They're teaching us how to work with them best. And that is really great feedback to get. So not only to be in the role of teacher, but also to be in the role of the learner as the coach. It's very, very important. Those are great, great responses. So I taught for many years, and I most recently, in my last 3 years, was teaching 4 and 5-year-olds. And one of the best ways I found to get them to clean up after they'd had like this whole play period, and there's stuff everywhere, and you've given them their 5-minute warning, and now it's time to clean up, there would always be the one kid who's like slinking off to his chair or reading a book and not cleaning up. So one of the things that I would say is, hey, can you pick up 4 blocks? And they would pick up 4 blocks, and I'd say, you did a great job picking up 4 blocks. I really appreciate that. Do you think you can pick up 5 blocks? And before you know it, this kid is cleaning up the whole room on their own. So basically what I did is I praised their effort. And I honestly believe that if you could teach a 5-year-old, you could teach anybody. Just keep that in mind, that when you are giving your praise, you're saying things like, you had 3 great catches out there, or you had 5 great passes. You're really focusing on the effort. And that really plays into what I'll talk about later on, the whole notion of when somebody does make a mistake or miss a play. So it's a really important, you know, kids are really engaged when the experience is meaningful to them and the experience is memorable to them. And the elm tree of mastery connects to them in a way that is very meaningful because it's focusing actually on their actions, things that they can practice and develop. And it's memorable because you're reinforcing it by sharing that with them. Hey, great catch. That's going to resonate in their head. So not only are they going to go home remembering great catch, great play, thinking, wow, I had 3 great passes. Maybe next time I can have 5 great passes. Now they're learning about goal setting, and they're also learning about the flexibility of talent, that it's not just about who you are now in this given moment and what everybody's told you, but who you can be in this world. So you're opening them up to their own potential. So your job, okay, so this is a good way to remember that. Also give, as well as coach, I'm going to give you another title. You ready? You are also a noticer of effort, okay? So I really want you to think about that and think about how many times you can notice kids' effort, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And it's really hard, you know, I didn't grow up that way, and I remember years ago I was coaching kids, and they were kind of not paying attention, and I thought, let me give an incentive. I said, all right, whoever does this next drill well and follows all the instructions, you get to play coach. And they got up there, and I said, you get to be me now. And they were like, don't do that. Stop. Go over there. Take a lap. And I was like, whoa, that's me. And that's what they're getting out of me. And that's when I learned I really needed to change up. The Elm Tree of Mastery and the work of Carol Dweck has really helped reshape my emotional landscape so that now the proper words are coming out, the helpful words when I work with kids. So it feels hard at first, but you'll get the hang of it. So in the Elm Tree of Mastery, we talk about the scoreboard definition and the mastery definition. And the scoreboard definition is very results oriented. So that's what was, you know, for a lot of you, your past, how you grew up. For me, Brandon, you're the exception. Comparison with others, mistakes are not okay. And that not only is good for you, it's not good for your relationship with the kids, and it's not good for their development moving forward. How many, you know, I used to be a PE teacher, and many times I was at gatherings where people would say, oh, what was your what did you teach? And I'd say PE, and they'd say, oh, I have a terrible dodgeball story. This is 20, 30 years later. Like, our goal can be that nobody shows up in therapy at the age of 40 with a bad dodgeball story that has ruined their lives. That's your challenge, okay? When we look at a mastery definition, we're looking at effort, we're looking at learning, and what do we feel about mistakes? What do you think? Mistakes are okay. That's great. So mostly I coach. Does anybody out here, have we had anybody out here coaching like middle school athletes?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. High school? Yeah? Okay. All right. And then we have some youth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is a real, you know, when you see often in the youth and the middle school athletes, they can be distracted. They get focused on peer relationships, which is a good thing. But then what happens too is that if you're coaching kids in a certain way and they're hearing how you speak and you're more dominant, oppressive in your language, that's how they're going to speak to each other, because you're creating a culture. So what do you want that culture to be? When athletes perform, when you focus on effort, they perform better. But when they make a mistake, what do you think they're feeling? What do you think an athlete, what do you think they're experiencing? What do they fear most when they make a mistake?
Vulnerability. Everybody else looking at them. Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter said on her middle school team this year, she feared making a mistake because the other players would yell at her.
Right, right. So fear of people getting angry. I mean, as a coach, you know, I fear that people are going to think that I'm not a good coach. I was coaching some kids in a relay this past spring, and they dropped the baton. And I felt, you know, I taught them all about mistakes are okay, even taught them how to drop the baton and pick it back up quickly, which they did. I taught them how to recover from the mistake. But I still had this feeling hanging over my head right here, nope, maybe it was right here, that's my fault, you know? And so we all fear this mistake, this loss of face, but really it's really important to work with the kids around understanding that that's all correctable. As much as it's correctable in me, it's correctable in them, and that it doesn't mean bad news about them. So give me some examples. Does anybody want to share with me an example of how they've talked with an athlete after the athlete has had a fail or a mistake?
Well, for me, the most recent coaching experience I had, I just did 3 youth football camps over the last month or so. And the age groups were from as young as 6 to up through middle schoolers. Maybe the oldest kids were 15. And I think you hit something earlier with the peer relations at that age, where they're kind of all looking at each other and kind of whoever the coolest kids, whoever the best kids are, they're going to kind of react off of them. So for me, I try when a kid made a mistake, it was important for me to kind of catch them and pull them aside and talk to them about the things that they were doing well. Instead of working on the things that they were, you know, focusing on the things that they did wrong. You know, if it was catching, you know, they ran a route and they ended up dropping the pass. It was focusing on the things like you ran a great route. You ran as fast as you could. You broke at the right place. You just missed the pass. You know, and then how could we do it better the next time?
That's great, Brandon. That's great. Focusing on what did go well. I use that with the athletes that I consult with now, and it really surprises them. They're like, oh, I didn't even think about asking myself that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what you do too is you spark their curiosity. Children are innately curious, but as they get older, they get kind of fixed in their mindsets, and you're really continuing to foster that. Kelly, how about you? How have you worked with kids in ways when, or your athletes around mistakes?
The biggest thing that I had this season, this is the very first year that my 9 and 10-year-old lacrosse players have a goalie. They've never had a goalie before. So we had a little girl that jumped in to play goalie, and she was really super enthusiastic about it. And the first game that we had, every single time the other team took a shot, it went in the goal. every time. Like she didn't stop one ball at all. So at the halftime of the game, she came out and her head was just down and she was so upset. And she even said to the team, like, I'm sorry I let you down. You guys are playing so well. And we were actually winning, but, you know, she had 5 shots scored against her. And, you know, being the PCA person, I was thinking, oh, it's okay. Mistakes are okay. But I realized like that really wasn't going to motivate her, because then it would teach her that it's okay to let the ball go past you. And I didn't really want to do that. Yeah. So what I did was I told her, I said, you know what, Mara? I said, you don't have to stop every single ball. That's really hard to do. What I want you to do is just touch it. Just try to get your body in front of it. Even if it bounces off your stick and goes in the goal, even just your goal is to have that ball touch your body or your stick somewhere. And if you can do that, then that's going to be a good game. I don't care if the ball goes in the goal. I just want you to touch it. And she was like, really? And I said, that's all I want you to do. Yeah. And the second half, she went out and you could just see her moving. Like before, she was afraid of the ball and she would move away from it. Well, that's why the ball went in. So the second half, when she went out there, you could actually see her like purposely throwing her body in front of the ball. And that's what we want goalies to do, is not be afraid of getting hit by the ball. And, you know,
that's great.
It worked.
You took away the fear. You had to focus on something else, a distraction. A little bit.
Get hit with the ball. Get hit with the ball.
Moving the goalposts. You know, and mistakes don't always show up as like an error in a baseball game. They can look like, you know, I'm working with an athlete who is devoting her post-collegiate years to training for the steeplechase on the track. And she started running out of steam to do her morning runs alone. She came out of a college scene where she got to run with people all the time. She's very social. So we tried a few things to get her motivated, and she was feeling like almost like a failure that she couldn't make herself get out the door. So what we said is, you know what? If you don't want to go out and run, don't. And she started giving herself permission to not run, to not put that pressure on herself and feel like a failure. And out of that, she's gone back to doing her morning runs, and she gets to feel proud about herself. So let's see. With that, you know, Kelly, you saw how their fear of failure was erased, making mistakes more okay, and focusing on something else. Like Brandon said, what did go well, or as Kelly, you said, touching the ball. So let's actually do something together. I want you to think of this not only as you being coaches, but I want you to think of this as you being students, that you're learning and taking this on for yourselves in your own lives. So we're going to go to we're going to do a scenario. Let's see. So in this scenario, your team tends to play tentatively. Let's have somebody read that. Brandon, is there a way to put that slide up, or it's the tentative play?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. So let's stop talking. Let's stop you guys listening to me talk, and
there you go.
Let's get you guys talking to each other.
It was up for a second, and then it was gone.
Click on the little box at the bottom.
Okay, I see it now. All right, tentative play. Your team. Oh, there it goes again. Hold on, I'll click on it. All right, your team tends to play tentatively and lets the opponent drive the action. What can you do?
So what I'd like you to do is turn to somebody next to you and pair share your solutions for that. Go ahead.
Yada, yada.
All right, Kelly, what you got?
Yada. I just scream at them and yell at them until they start moving better. Use fear. It works every time.
Yeah, I guess I try to ask them what's going, you know, if it's something that's not in their normal, like if they normally are playing aggressive and they're playing tentatively now, it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? What's different? Mm-hmm. You know, hey, what's going on, guys? Why are we playing like this?
Yeah. I think just find out why. Find out what's going on with them.
Great. Yeah, getting their input, getting their feedback. I had a team that wanted me to work with them, and the kids are all at a Quaker school, and they're taught to be like friendly and collaborative, things like that. And what they would do is they'd go out onto the field, and they wouldn't have that killer instinct, and they would lose the game in the first half. And so I worked with the coach around praising the effort of the kids, taking their focus on these sort of soft Quaker values. Kelly, you probably understand what I'm talking about, being in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And you know, this competing to win, doing the best you can. And so the coaches learn to focus on efforts and having the kids focus on hustling and passing and things like that. And the kids were able to shift that to having more like aggressive play, but not feel like it was contrary to any other life lessons they've been learning in school. So, okay, so let's bring this to life with the, we're going to give you a toolkit, okay? So athletic trainers have their trainer kit. You're going to have your coach's kit. We've got a couple things that go in that coach's kit for you, okay? And you can also look on page 27 of your book. You'll see that there it says maximize effort by rewarding unsuccessful effort. So this is how we're going to work around the mistakes a little bit. So how do you think a player gets rewarded when they make a successful play?
I think they get praised, they get clapped, cheered for, they get a goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or a ribbon.
Okay, that's right. You know, there's built-in rewards, you know, when you do well. Okay, and we've talked a little bit about giving them genuine praise for their effort. So what are some things that you've learned so far? How would we give praise? Give me an example.
Body language. I would say recognition by you know, kind of pointing it out to other people on the team.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I like what you said in E-Tank about like positive charting is actually keeping track of how many times the athlete does that skill. So when they come out, you can say, wow, you used your left hand 7 times during that quarter or whatever it was.
Right. And so then when they make a mistake, you might say, what?
I think you would praise it first. You would say, wow, you know what? I know you dropped the ball. You might have dropped the ball, but I love the way you were challenging yourself to use your weak hand or use your weak foot or your weak side or whatever it was. Great,
great. And as Brandon was saying before is, you know, also getting them to say, well, what did go well? You didn't have the race that you wanted, or you didn't have the play that you wanted. You didn't have the game that you wanted. What do you think did go well? They might say, oh, well, you know, I had a good warm up. And you're training them to actually access those thoughts, because those are in the back in a closet. That's what society is telling them. And everything up front is win, lose, be the best, you're the best, trophy for everything. So all those thoughts are in a closet. And we're teaching kids to open up that closet and bring those thoughts up to the front and out of their mouths. And when we change, when we speak it, we can think it. When we think it, we can believe in it. When we believe in it, our actions change. And then kids get to live into the results. And you get to live in the results of being this kind of coach. So the other thing in the toolkit, let me see, looking in the toolkit. All right, athletic tape. Some Ben Gay in there. All right. Is there still Ben Gay? I don't know.
I think Arnica now. Most of the kids use Arnica. They don't use Ben Gay anymore. Arnica, right. Ice. There's
ice packs. Okay, there's something we call the mistake ritual. That's right. Yeah, an aspirin for the coach, Excedrin. The mistake ritual. So a mistake ritual is a fun thing that you can teach the kids if they miss on a kick or a play or whatever, they can either, you know, wipe the sweat off. A funny one is flush the toilet, gets them laughing. I think it was Julie Foudy, the Olympic soccer player, would keep a rubber band on her wrist. And so if she missed a goal, instead of dwelling in the mistake and getting bogged down, she would snap out of it. Snap out of it. It's a great one. I love. How about anybody out there? Can you think of a mistake ritual, or have you seen them on professional games played or used them yourself?
My team, we did Shake It Off. I asked the girls what they wanted to use, and they're big little Taylor Swift fans. So we would dance around and say Shake It Off. And then when they were out on the field, they would go like this. You know, they would actually like just shake their hand a little bit. And so
okay, cool.
The Shake It Off.
Cool. Anybody else?
I think like kind of wipe it off, brush the shoulder off kind of thing. Hey, brush it off. It's okay.
Good, good, good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or shaking the hands, just shaking it off. It just shifts up the nervous system, shakes up the head a little bit, and you can kind of get out of that space. So we're going to watch, we've got another video for you. It's PCA Advisory Board member and New York Mets Major League Baseball player, Curtis Granderson. He's going to explain a mistake ritual that he uses to move on to the next play.
Okay, I'll play it for you.
Baseball definitely has a lot of failure. One of the things that we have to do is try to find a way to forget that failure and also forget some of those highs as well. We got to be able to forgive because the next pitch is coming, the next game is coming. One of the coolest things I ever had, one of my college coaches grabbed a little toy toilet, and as we were going around, when you had something bad, you just flushed it. Flush it out of there, get ready for the next thing, whether it's an error, whether it's a pitch, whether it's a game. We just flush it away because once it's happened, it's done with. Now we get ready for the next thing.
That's great. A couple other things I want to add to the great contributions you gave is take a breath. One of the athletes I work with, we have the 5-second rule. So that helps him with emotional regulation. So instead of freaking out, flipping out, complaining, or whatever his reaction is, he counts to 5. You could also, if you need to, count to 10. Depends on how amped up you are, how many seconds you need.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things are great, and a great time to practice them is at practice. Take the kids aside. Be really intentional about it too. Don't be like, oh yeah, by the way, flush the toilet, but actually sit them down the first time. They'll get their Snickers out. And the other thing too is empower them to come up with their own and share with each other.
You broke up for a second. Go ahead. Say again what you just said.
Empower them to come up with their own and share with each other.
That's good.
That's a really important part of culture too, that they support each other.
Yep. All right. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. Well done. All right.
It's funny. I was just thinking about with the mistake ritual thing. I hadn't thought about it before. My wife is a clinical social worker, so she works with a lot of therapy sessions. And when people are in there and they're kind of sitting down, and she talks about like them turning around their attitude, she actually like makes them get up, stand up, and actually turn around. Like, and it's just like a physical thing. It's like connecting the physical with the mental, and like once you can have that break, you can actually, you really can actually think differently.
Yeah,
that's great.
My coach in college one time made me go back in the locker room. Like I was I got out there and I was in field hockey and I just wasn't playing well. And I was, getting really upset at myself. I was missing ball after ball. And it was the middle of the game. It wasn't even like halftime at the end of the game. And she pulled me out of the game and she said, I want you to go in the locker room, splash your face with cold water, and come back out. And when you come out, it's a new game and I want you to get started. And I was like, you want me to walk all the way over the game? Like, no, I want you to run. I want you to run to the locker room. And all right.
Rituals are really key. Rituals are really key. It helps as they enter the playing field, wipe their feet on the threshold of the field and put one day behind them, the new day ahead of them. It's really important, and it's a great technique to take advantage of.
I had a coach ask me one time, that type of a thing, is that more of a superstition or a mistake ritual? And it was a baseball coach, and he said, in baseball, there's a lot of superstitions. Don't wash your pants, wear the same socks, do this and this and this before you hit the ball. And I said, I think there's a fine line between a mistake ritual and a superstition. If you want to call it a superstition, but it works to reset their minds to get over the mistake that they make or get themselves mentally prepared, then go for it. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, whatever they believe in, whatever works.
Exactly. So that was a half hour, Meg, just to let you know. Just for people, that's fine. I'm fine with it as long as you just are aware of the time. I think time awareness is more important than the time cutoff. So I think it was good. How did you feel doing it that time?
I felt more in my voice and less focused on the script.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I thought you were much, I think you were closer to the script when you were talking with your own voice, because you were talking from your own experience a lot more.
Yeah.
But it was blending very well. I had the PowerPoint going in the little corner of my computer so I could see, and you were going right along with it. You were just using your own words, which is exactly what we want you to do. We teach you the script so that you can make it your own and then go out and deliver your own message with using our structure. So I think
it took only 3 demos to understand that. So
it is, but that's why we do 3. That's why we do 3. Brandon, I would love to hear, since this was the first time you got to see Meg, and Brandon is the person that's actually going to be selling Meg to the Philadelphia area population. What are some highlights? What are some things, Brandon, that really stuck out for you that you really liked about either what she said or her style, or what did you connect with the most?
I think that like you mentioned there, I mean, I've seen a lot of, I haven't seen Meg yet, but I've seen a lot of workshops, and it did seem different. You know, even though it was the same material, it seemed like there was it felt different than other ones that I had been to. So that personal touch on it was actually really good. It for me, it even kept it fresh on some of the ideas. And it's funny when you hear it from different people, you know, one point might resonate more in the way that somebody explains it than somebody else explains it.
So what resonated? Was there any one thing that stuck out with you because I always talk a lot with trainers about sticky things. There's certain things that you say that will actually stick with the coaches and they'll remember it when they leave. Is there anything
well, I mean, for me, just like remembering what I just listened to, you know, we were talking about the elm tree, you know, and it's the 3 things. For me, it seemed like a lot of the time was spent on the mistake part of it. And maybe that just because it resonated most with me was the mistakes are okay. You know, the different ways to, you know, to deal with mistakes and how we as coaches coach through mistakes and how that's part of the process. Whereas it seemed like maybe that's because it resonated the most, but it seemed less like there wasn't a whole lot on the learning, mastery, growth mindset. Like if we had to break it down into how much time was spent on each one of the things, and maybe it was also just the tools. Like for me, and honestly, this is just my own personal opinion as a PCA person now. You know, when I go to these workshops, I try to put myself in the mindset of a coach coming out of it. And I think that anybody that goes to a workshop feels like, hey, look, this is really great information, but what can I actually, when I leave the room, how does it actually change what I do? So, you know, really, you know, kind of leaving them with tools. And I kind of think about things, you know, I heard somebody say one time before, when you're teaching things, you know, you tell people what you're going to teach them, you teach it to them, and at the end, you recap what you taught them. And I feel like sometimes when I listen to all PCA workshops, I come out of there thinking, I know this information, but if I didn't know it, what would I actually leave with? And I think for this one, the mistake ritual thing, that would be absolutely one thing that I took and I actually used right away. But I think going into some of the other ones, it's like, okay, with this whole mastery kind of learning, growth mindset approach thing, what are things that I can do that are actual physical tools that I can leave with? And maybe that there was some ones in there that we did specifically talk about, they just didn't resonate as much.
No, that's great. Thank you. If you had like one suggestion for Meg, what would be, because this is her 3rd time doing this, and I'm so excited because I've seen a lot of the suggestions that I've given you previously acted upon, and I'm excited about that. But Brandon doesn't know what my requests or suggestions were for you here. So if you had a suggestion for Megan going out to a live workshop based on what you saw, would you have any wishes or suggestions for her?
I'm assuming, and I got into this late, I'm assuming this is part of our DGC 1. This is winning in life lessons.
Yep.
Okay. Suggestions. I think the only part where I kind of was like, huh, that's interesting, was at the very, very beginning. I actually even wrote it down. There was a part where you said something about male coaches and female coaches. And I don't know, the way that I took it was that inherently males are more of the screaming kind of win at all cost coaches, and that if I would have had female coaches, they would have acted differently. Where the female coaches that I've had in different sports, they've been just as, you know, they've been just as intense as the male coaches. So I think there was the only suggestion I had is that wasn't clear to me. Were you implying that if we had female coaches, they would have acted differently, but because throughout sports, most of the time we have male coaches, that's why they win at all costs?
Yeah, I was implying with males of a certain era. You know, like the more
Sure.
the old school males, the era that I came up through, when there weren't women coaches and men, you know, there wasn't cultural information for men around what to do with their anger.
I would be careful with that only because Kelly and I actually
careful.
Kelly and I actually had a conversation months ago. One of my first workshops that I was working on, it was for a Little League Baseball, I think it was. And our trainer, it was when Randy Nathan ended up going out there.
Right.
If they wanted something specifically, they kind of like, they didn't, you know, like overtly say it, but because they said that most of their Little League Baseball coaches were males, that they wanted us to send them a male trainer. And that they wanted us to send them, quote unquote, a baseball person. And so they wanted it to fit this mold. And I think if I had to put myself in that audience, and if I was a male coach and I thought that somebody was saying that, especially that early on in a workshop, I might kind of start, it might lose like some.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to actually, that was one of my first comments early on as well. Just be careful. Sometimes as trainers, we have certain opinions, even not necessarily just that, but I've seen a lot of trainers that have certain opinions about certain things. And I've just had to remind them, like, what you say is representing Positive Coaching Alliance.
Yeah.
So what you say, they're going to take it as Positive Coaching Alliance's stand on things. So, I mean, like I heard a trainer one time say, a question from the coach was, well, what about if I punish the kids with running laps during a drill? Is that okay? And the trainer's like, well, yeah, I think as long as you have a good relationship with the players, it's a good thing. It's okay to do. And so they were like, everybody was jotting down notes. And I'm thinking they just made a statement that represents the Positive Coaching Alliance view on things, as PCA says it's okay to punish players with running. So it's just something, you know, you just have to be aware that comments that you make are taken as representing the whole company and their views on things. So I think what I think is always funny about that is that when I was in high school in the 80s, in the old school, my field hockey coach was a female, very, very win at all costs, very vocal, very negative. And then the next season when I played basketball was the most gentle, loving, positive, supported male coach I had all through high school. So for me, early on, she was evil. And he was awesome. Like, we just loved it. It was such a great experience. So
yeah, and I realized I combined two thoughts. One was cultural information about how to coach back in that era, and the value of having a variety of different coaches. And my suggestion is if I'd had more of a variety of coaches, I might have had a variety of experiences. But it seems like a lot of my people, I didn't know how to. I needed to separate.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, I always say, come up with a point with the goal in mind. And I'm sure you know that as well. Sometimes if you're trying to articulate a point, think about what you really are trying to say last. What are you trying to help them walk away with? And then work backwards from there. Because sometimes I feel like, gosh, I'm trying to get to a point, but it's not working. And what I really want you to know is this. I just didn't go about getting you there the right way.
I'm a little angry, so sometimes I forget my point, and I just got a lot of words, and I don't know where they were leading.
It's also hard. These workshops go by so quickly. I mean, it really is. I mean, a lot of partners request less time. Like, they have the training for 2 hours, but they might say, hey, look, I only want to do a 90-minute workshop or a 75-minute workshop. You guys are even cutting it down a little bit.
There's like major echo.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brandon. I've heard a lot of echo. I'm sorry.
Did you hear that? Was there anything else then, Brandon?
Well, I mentioned, yeah, there is a lot of echo. Let me actually turn.
Oh, is it me? Might be me. I'll turn my mute. I'll put mute on. Sorry.
I mentioned that one thing that I would say I would just, you know, watch out for, but I also thought that there was some, even having, you know, heard the PCA workshop so many times already, I thought that there was some points in there that were really great. I thought that with your background, you mentioned peer relations at one point, which I thought that was really interesting to me, especially at the youth level. If we're in a DGC1 workshop and these are young kids, there is a different dynamic between the kids, like the social part of what goes on, that if you don't have a background in child psychology or sports psychology, like, I don't even know how to deal with it. I might come across an issue and I have no idea how to deal with that. And I thought the other two things, I wrote down two notes. I thought that when you were talking about moving the goalposts, that was a very visual thing for me when we were talking about, there was a part in there with the mistakes are okay. And we were talking about how Kelly was talking about getting your body in front, and I was talking about focusing on the things they were doing well and running the routes besides dropping the ball. And you mentioned moving the goalpost. I thought that was something that was really visual that you could say, because like, you know, hey, look, they're, you know, they have an outcome in mind that they're trying to go to, but if we can show them that along the way they're reaching these other things, I just thought that was something that was really visual that resonated with me. And I think the other one, the noticer of effort thing, I thought that was a really strong point when that kind of whole 2 or 3 minutes in there when you talked about, as a coach, I'm going to give you a different name. I thought that was something that was really great. Okay,
thank you.
All right. Am I still echoing?
No, we're good.
No, we're good.
Okay. I just texted my daughter upstairs and said, bring me headphones, but I guess I'm okay. I agree with a lot of those points. I liked the way that you really did take the material and made it your own. And that is, I mean, that is my ultimate goal for training any new trainer, is take our material and make it your own, but stick close to what we're you know, it's got to be the same message. And I think sometimes there's such a fine line between telling people to make it their own and then say, well, it has to be the PCA message. I've had some people that have gone so far the opposite way, and I'm like, this doesn't even resemble a PCA workshop. And other people that stick so much to it, I'm like, we're not hearing you. So I think, first of all, your personality came out a lot more today. You definitely smiled more. You definitely used a lot more expression. Your voice intonation changed, your pitch, your tone, all of that stuff was a lot more emotive. And I thought that was really great. And that helps bring us in. It makes it interesting. It's not just you giving us information. It's bringing in parts of it that, you know, we're near and dear to you. And I liked that. I keep little notes along the edges, like when you do a personal story or ask us a question or ask us to pair share. Like I have little, you know, little, what do you call it, acronyms that I put on the side of my paper. And I really think that going through my notes, my 2 pages of notes here, that you kept a really great balance and flow. So it was a personal story, and then the PCA principle, and then you asked us a question, and then you followed up with a personal story, and then you probably, you know, it was a good balance and flow throughout. And I thought that was much better than before as well. And your stories were short. They were short. They were to the point. And you asked us for our stories. You must have asked us like 6 times just in conversation. Well, tell me. Last time I think I said, ask, don't tell. I kept saying over and over again, ask us, don't tell us. And I noticed the one time when you wanted to tell us and you stopped and you asked us. So I thought that was great. You kind of caught yourself. And what I love about it, Meg, is that, like, you asked Brandon a question, he gave you an answer, and then your follow-up of his answer was so supportive. You're such a great listener that when he gave you an answer, you were like, that is a great idea, Brandon. I love when you talked about this. I mean, that's the way to get coaches to want to share at your workshops. It's just like a coach would do. You know, if a child has a good play and the coach rewards the effort, the child's going to play harder. If you're at a workshop and a coach gives you an answer and you reward that by saying, wow, I really love the way you said that, or I like that example, they're going to want to share more. So I really thought your listening skills were excellent in listening to what Brandon was saying and just reinforcing what he was saying. It made me want to answer the next question, because I was like, well, I wanted to say mine was good. I thought that was great. Couple things, again, sticky topics I thought were awesome. I love the way you said you are now a noticer of effort. You know, this is your role to notice effort. I thought that was extremely strong. When you said something about, oh, here it is, we're in a tug of war against society. Like, what a great visual. Again, I mean, that's just a powerful phrase. I like that. You mentioned 2 or 3 times about the kids teaching us. And I think that was like a theme that you put throughout a couple different ideas. And I thought that was great as well. I liked even your 4 to 5-year-old example. You know, how simple is that to teach 4 to 5-year-olds to clean up? I mean, what a great, easy thing. I mean, I've had 4 kids. I've done all the psychology and getting them to clean up, but I never thought to bring it into a workshop. And I thought that was really, really clever the way you did that. I loved my favorite story about the whole thing, and it was too short. I say, you know, cut your stories down. I thought this was too short. When you said that you asked the kids, their incentive was for them to be the coach, and the kids said back to you, and when you got to watch them be you, and they were saying, don't do that, don't do this. I thought that you kind of brushed over that story a little too quickly, because that is a huge aha moment. And That's why I started thinking, gosh, what if I asked my players to act me out? What would they do? So I think that's where the skills of storytelling come in. And if you watch someone that's a really good storyteller, to bring that story to life, and I like your voice, your voice was like, don't do this, don't do that. That was good. But then pause a little bit, because I think that story needs to just sink in for a minute. You need to just give that a little bit of thought, because you went right away into like the next, and then scoreboard versus mastery. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm still thinking about, holy crap, what if my players had to act me out? What would they do? So I would spend a little bit more time on that one. And then right after that, you said about the people in their 40s that have to go to therapy for a horrible dodgeball story. Like, what a great point that is as well. I joke with my own children all the time, like, all right, you'll go to therapy someday and it'll be all right. I'll pay for your therapy bills. But the therapy over dodgeball, I think that's awesome. And we don't want to be the cause of that. So I thought that was a really good point too. The other part, I thought you did a really nice job with vulnerability. And I think that's, again, a great way to connect to coaches when you talked about dropping the baton. Wow, how many coaches can relate to that? And you brought it up with saying, wow, sometimes coaches, might be embarrassed, or you might not look like a good coach. And I've heard so many trainers say it, but to follow that up with a time that you actually felt embarrassed as a coach, that's huge. There's nothing more I could ask for there. I thought that was great. Let me say, even the steeplechase story. Like, I thought that, just throwing in little stories like that, I thought were really good. The one thing that I would encourage you to do is to reach outside of your track and field and grab some examples from other sports, because most likely there aren't very many youth track workshops. I don't know how many Brandon has on the docket coming up, but a lot more are based around, soccer, baseball, things like that, swimming. So I would try to grab some other examples from other sports to sprinkle in to your workshops as well. Even if they're not yours, steal somebody else's or use an example. I think that would be helpful.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
But balance it out with yours as well. So I think that's good. Let me see. What else? Oh, just the idea, again, the last thing I wrote was, I like the way you have, I think your theme going through it was for the coaches to empower the players. And you used that a few times about empowering them, giving them the language to use, teaching them the culture. That was the big takeaway that I would get out of this. I'm sure if I heard you for an entire workshop, was my role is not just to teach them skills, but to empower them to change a culture and use the language that they use. And I know that comes from a lot of your background and what you do. And just the example when you said, like, take it from back here to the, I don't even remember what you said, but this visual is in my head. Like, this is what she's talking about, from the mind to the mouth and out. And that's what they do. So that's where your background coming into this was really interesting to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brandon, actually, instead of emailing you, I can check with you. So I was telling Meg, the next 2 workshops that I have coming up are positive motivation. And the one is for Church Farm School, and the next one is for the Westmont Soccer. Mm-hmm. So I invited Meg to come, because I don't know if there's Double Gold Coach 1s coming up in the next 2 weeks that are anywhere near, her to be able to do. But I invited her to come out to my peak positive motivation workshops. And I thought, since it is in mastery, I can give her a section of that workshop to do, to co-facilitate.
Those are the master peak performance ones, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But I thought it might be a great opportunity, because they're both longtime partners. Yeah. So, and Westmont, I think Westmont is the one that you said you could make on the 6th, Meg.
Yeah.
And that's just it's a great room. It's a great group of coaches. They have it set up really well, and we've done lots of workshops there. So they're already big supporters of PCA. I don't know, Brandon, if you have any more details about the reason they chose peak performance, or if it's the same coaches coming back, or if you remember it off the top of your head. But
I think it was exactly that. They've been a partner for a while, and they're starting just this past year. They started doing tech workshops with their premier program, and they really liked it. So they wanted to keep part of the new partnership. They wanted to continue to bring in tech workshops with the kids that are aging their program, and then also they wanted to keep coaching workshops fresh enough that they kept getting people back to come. So we had talked about, they had pretty much done throughout their partnership, they had done a lot of workshops that they've offered. So when I talked about a new one, they jumped on it.
Yeah, that's great. So I will, so right now, unless there's one before that, Meg, I will send you, congratulations, you are an associate trainer now. So we do feel confident in you to be able to get out. So what I do is I'll send you all the workshops in the area. And if you can get out to any of them to co-facilitate before that one, we'll see if you can do that. If not, we can just wait until the 6th. And I will send you an email that gives you access to the PCA Trainer Share folder. So you'll have access to all the workshops that we do, all the videos, all the resources, and you can make that in a Google Drive for yourself. And Sonia will follow up with you as well. Sonia is our trainer manager, so she'll follow up with you how to get you entered into the system and show you how all that stuff works. But that's where we'll go from here. So I will make sure that you have all the right workshop materials, PowerPoint, all of that stuff, and we'll talk about what section you'd like to do of that workshop.
Okay.
And we'll plan it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Take care, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Brandon.
Nice to meet you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.